Okay, at this time, we'll begin our second interview. Mr. Threadgill, we want to welcome you here before the board for your interview and your interest in the job of superintendent here in Mobile County. We want to thank you for applying. We had somewhere around 40 applicants, and those who met the minimum qualifications, we were able to cull that down to 10 and then to the top 3. And we will be asking questions, and the questions that we will ask are kind of somewhat open-ended. We want you to be as concise and as to the point for the most part as you can. I'll begin with the questions. The first question is, give an example or give examples of your best professional successes.
Best professional successes. I probably have several. I'm going to just talk about a couple. I can recall as middle school principal when I was in Troy, we had a very difficult time being middle school principal. We had a lot of students leaving the public schools once they left the elementary school and was going to the private schools. We had some discipline issues, we had academic issues, and when I became principal, I had to change that mindset. I had to change the environment. I had to change the culture of that school. Once I began to put things in place and build a team, we were able to overcome those difficulties, and the students from the elementary school, the feeder school, did not go to the private schools. They started coming to our public school, our middle school. But the most, one of the biggest successes that I've had is when I first became superintendent of Elba City. Elba City was going through a very difficult time. I was actually, with interims and permanents, I was actually the 6th superintendent in 5 years. Elba City had a very hard time, difficult time with finances. Academics were very, very low. Morale was low. We had a lot of teacher and administrative turnover. So I was able to assemble a team and to turn things around. Our finance, instead of borrowing money to meet our payroll, we actually had 1.2 in our reserve, so the finance was turned around. We also were able to turn the academics around, and I'm proud to say when I first arrived at Elba, we were a D school. Currently, we are now a B school as I departed. We also, when I came to Elba, we had a 63% graduation rate. It is now 96%. The city lost confidence in our school system there in Elba, and I was able to turn that situation around. The state superintendent actually told me that if I didn't turn things around, that the city school system would go into the county school system. So I only had one shot at it, and I assembled a team, and we got it done. And I'm proud to say that, you know, the academics were up, the finances were good, morale was good, and we were able to recruit and retain teachers.
Thank you. Mr. Stringfellow, question 2.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Threadgill. What is your concept of the roles of the board and the superintendent?
Well, that's fairly simple. You have to clearly define the roles. And I believe the role as board members is to implement and create policies and procedures. I think the role as superintendent is very simple, is to ensure that those policies and procedures and the day-to-day operations are run efficiently, putting people in place to make sure those things are run efficiently.
Thank you. Dr. Crenshaw?
Describe the relationship that should exist between the superintendent and the board. second part of that, what is your approach to establishing and maintaining this relationship?
The board, we have to have communication, number one. We first have to obviously define our roles, and then we must have communication, whether that's through work session and face-to-face, whether that's through phone calls, emails, texts, but we must have communication. And when you have communication, you allow transparency to come in. We must work as a team. We must have a trusting relationship and have confidence that we all are here for the same goal, and that's the betterment of our students. We also need to make sure that we treat each other professionally and with respect. And we also should maintain confidentiality at all times. And I think if we have that in our heads, in the back of our minds, I think we shouldn't have any issues.
Okay, Mr. Battles. Mr. Battles has a two-part question.
Okay, Mr. Threadgill, thank you for coming this morning. How would you address the low-performing schools and failing schools, and what would you do to help improve those academic conditions?
First and foremost, here in Mobile, we have to change the mindset. And not only just in academics, but system-wide, division-wide, we have to change the mindset. And in order to do that, we have to have tough conversations. As it relates to failing schools, we have to have those tough conversations to not be afraid to talk about equity versus equality. We have to change the mindset that, you know, if school A gets the same thing as school B, then they both should be successful. That's equality, but we should go deeper than that. We should look at these schools and go in and see exactly what they need instead of saying that one size fits all. We need to go in and see exactly what these schools need resource-wise to make a difference. So we need to have these tough conversations about equity and equality. The next thing that we need to focus on is personnel. We need to ensure that we retain, recruit good teachers. We should no longer put teachers in a situation that they're unaware of. And what I mean by that is we need to make sure that we have good teachers that understands the environment of which they're going to be teaching in, understand those challenges, and still hold those kids with high expectations and take pride in what they're doing. We also need to recruit administrators to understand that very same thing and support those teachers. We also should no longer have a book, programs, check sheet, initiatives to take the place of a good teacher and good instruction. We should get rid of the unnecessary stuff that teachers have to do and allow them to teach and focus on good instruction, which means we also need meaningful professional development. There's no tailor-made professional development. We need to look at these teachers and their weaknesses to give them the proper professional development that they need to be successful. We also need to have conversations about apathy and empathy. We have a lot of people that just don't care, and we need to have those tough conversations. We need to engage our parents more to get positive parental involvement, bring them to the table, educate them, and let them know the importance of school for their students. Once we do all of that, we hold everybody accountable, the parents, the students, the teachers, the administrators, including myself. And with that recipe, change will come with the failing schools.
Well, I would hope so, Mr. Threadgill, because recently I just had a problem with one of my principals because the whole year they have not had a PTA meeting. And I told him, I said, well, sir, this is unacceptable because unless you engage the parent, to take an active participatory role in the child's education, you're not going to have anything that's going to be beneficial. So I really appreciate your comment concerning the parental involvement, but more importantly, though, it's understanding that there is a connection between the parent, the student, the school, the teacher, and the community.
Absolutely.
Mr. Battles, I think you had another part to that about the fiscal,
Yes, sir.
the monies.
I did, sir. I got a little short memory there.
That's okay.
But, Mr. Threadgill, you've been here for several months. You've already had the opportunity to witness the fiscal condition that the Mobile County Public School System is. There's a shortfall in the 1 month fund balance. There are some other inequities. What attempts would you make in order to try to correct those issues and get us so that we could be on a sound footing?
Right. Well, finance is an issue that we all have to understand. Finance is an issue that everyone faces in public education. That's statewide, nationwide. So finance is something that we can't fix overnight. It's a process. You have to have a plan. I mean, it's just simple. You have to have a plan. I am a numbers guy. I like finance, so, I really get into it. But Mobile is running on a $420-some-odd million budget. 56% of that is state allocated. 15% of that is federally funded. But 25% of that is local. And that's what we need to really concentrate on and really dig into to see exactly how we're spending those local dollars, because 25% is a lot. Unfortunately, the largest expenditures for that 25% of that local funds is personnel. So we need to look at our personnel and the number of students that we have to make sure those two are aligned to run this system more efficiently. Now, I'm not saying we need to start getting rid of, personnel, but what I'm saying, you can do it in a non-aggressive way. And what I mean by that, you don't necessarily have to go in and start riffing, reduction in force.
That's right.
Because that causes tension, and that causes more money than we want to pay. But there are some innovative ways that we can do that through attrition, through an incentive plan that we will be rolling out this week as an advertisement. So there's other things that we can do to not affect student achievement, number one. Number two, we need to look at all third-party vendors and programs. And we just need to simply look down the list, and I need to ask the question, I need to see the documentation, how these third-party vendors or programs are benefiting my students. And you can't show me any documentation how it's benefiting my students, then we don't need it.
Can you describe a third-party vendor?
I mean, we have several of them. I mean, any third-party vendor, synergistics, any type of program that we use. I mean, there's several examples.
Like Lean Frog?
Lean Frog is one of them.
Just wanted for clarification.
Right,
Go
right.
ahead, sir.
Okay. Mr. Harwell?
Yes, sir.
Question 5.
Yes, sir. What would be your goals and aspirations for our system?
My goal, my personal goal has a connection with my vision for this system, and it's always been the same. I've never wanted to be average. I always wanted to be above average. And my vision has been the same, my whole life. But I've changed it, I've tweaked it depending on the situation and the school system that I was in. But for Mobile, I think we need to resiliently move this system forward with having a transcending mindset. And what I mean by that, no longer should we accept being average. We are the largest school district in the state of Alabama, the 75th in the nation. People should be coming to us to see exactly what we're doing. And we have the potential. We have the resources. We have pockets of excellence. We have great personnel, great people, great leaders. But we should have a different mindset. Transcending means to surpass all expectations, to go above and beyond. And we have the resources to make that happen. We have the community. You know, I mentioned to the principals during principals meeting that, you know, we should no longer have the mindset and have the excuse, and I've heard so many times since I've been here, that's the way we've always done it. That doesn't make it right, but that's the way we've always done it. Mr. Threadgill, that's the way we've always done it, and it works. And I always use the VCR mentality, and people laugh at me when I always use it, but it's just like when the VCR was first invented in the 80s. We had a VCR, we popped the tape in, we had a remote control, we mashed play, it started playing. We mashed stop, it stopped. Rewind, it went backwards. We thought that was the best thing since sliced bread. But if we have the mindset of still using that VCR, keeping our heads down, staying the same way we have been for years, using that same VCR and using it because that's the way we always done it, and it works, we're going to look up, and we're going to be outdated, stagnant. People have surpassed us. We can no longer have that mentality that that's the way we've always done it. We have to think, I have to prepare the preschool, kindergarten kids 13 years from now to get ready to graduate from high school. I have to have that progressive thinking, and I can't do it by having the VCR mentality. So I want to resiliently move this school system forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stringfellow, question 4, please.
How, excuse me, how have you interacted with local, state, and national entities and leaders to develop your support for quality public education?
Yes, sir. I am a huge component of talking with legislators, representatives, city officials, any entity that I can involve to better our students. We should no longer have this concept of working in silos. It's us versus them. We should all come around the table, bring city officials and government officials to come to see how they can benefit us. To be honest with you, we need them and they need us. So, you know, that won't be an issue. I'm a big component of bringing people to the table for the betterment of our students.
Okay, Dr. Crenshaw, question 8.
It is estimated that there will be 20,000 new jobs in Mobile area in the next few years. How would you ensure the relevance of educating programs in preparing students for various career paths to meet local needs?
Sure. We actually have our signature academies that has done really, really well with the leadership of Mr. Mouton and Christy July. Those signatures academies have actually, I think the purpose of it is to make the students aware of different professions, to give them exposures to those career paths. And there again, I'm not an average person, so I want to go above and beyond that. And I just don't want to expose them to those career paths. I want to prepare them to, once they leave our hands to go directly into some of those jobs. So that's very important. I'm a component of educating the total child through academics, through art, through careers. So not only do I want to expose them in K through 12, I want to prepare them for their careers.
Mr. Battles?
Mr. Threadgill, our president has been in office for over a year. He had a very difficult time in making the transition. If you are selected to be the superintendent of Mobile County Public School System, the first 6 months going to really be a great test of your ability to manage this system and to make sure that all the students and all the administrators, the teachers, and whoever are the component parts of the public school system receive fair and equitable treatment. How would you describe your approach to making this transition into full-time superintendent?
All right, excellent question. The first thing I would do is just what I've been doing, and that's assess. I don't ever want to go in with a knee-jerk reaction. I want to build relations. I want to get in the community and build trust. Obviously, I will have a 30, 60, 90-day plan. But most importantly, I want to get to know the people. I've actually had this question asked to me when I was supposed to go into Montgomery. I was recruited to go into Montgomery to help with that takeover. And the question was asked, and I'm going to give you the same answer that I gave them. The first thing I'm going to do is go eat lunch with the students. And the reason why I say that is because I need to go in and build a relationship and a rapport with the very same people that I'm going to have to get up in the morning every day to fight for. So it's important for me to build those relationships, to assess the situation, and have a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and go in gradually to start making the changes that we need that better serve the students.
Now, in conjunction with the, you've already become aware of the 1-month fund balance. You've already become aware of the failing schools and all. Would that be part of your transition of preparation too?
Absolutely. You know, we run with that 424 annual budget, our monthly expenditures are around $36 million. And we do have a deficit in that $36 million. So I will be working very cautiously and strategically to correct that situation. Yes, sir.
I know the big words.
Okay, Mr. Harwell, question 10.
Yes, sir. Describe your experience implementing strategic planning, and how would you prioritize for our facility maintenance and construction projects?
Yeah. You know, everything should be based on student needs. That's just the bottom line. Our strategic plan, our facilities and maintenance, you know, we need to make sure, we need to change there again, I'm using it again, change the mindset that we need to understand that everything centers around students. And we need to focus everything on students. So we need to make sure that safety is first, as far as prioritizing, making sure that our students, classrooms and environment is conducive to learning, and align that budget with student needs. That's just the bottom line. So, you know, it's very simple. So if it's not centered around students, then we don't need it.
Okay. Did each of you get an opportunity to ask at least 2 questions?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. At the end of the, we have time, which is fantastic. I appreciate the way that you were succinct, on point, and covered the topic and stayed with the topic. At this point, we would like to allow you the opportunity to ask the board any questions that you might have for the board.
Sure. So this is my time to drill you all.
Bring it on.
Exactly what are you all looking in a superintendent?
We've had, we want to get a superintendent.
It's not a trick question.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to align it with what we had before. We had, in the past, a couple of us here were on the board then when we picked our last superintendent, and when we went through the process and so forth, and the process that we went through at that time did not wind up with a superintendent. First of all, and we hired Ms. Peak without an interview. The first thing that we want to do, we want to get a superintendent, okay? We want this process to yield a superintendent. That's one of the things. We want somebody who is going to be visible, and when I say visible, I mean visible to those people who are in our franchises, so to speak, those 87, 88, 89 schools that we have out there. Somebody who's there, somebody who is open, who is willing to take a call, who is willing to talk with the people who, parents and students and teachers and principals and so forth, in those opportunities that they are provided, i.e. we realize that a person can't go to every PTA meeting, but making a few PTA meetings, being visible, being seen within the communities and so forth. We want somebody who's going to be open and honest with the board. If it's bad news, see, bad news, unlike fine wine, doesn't get better with age. So we want the bad news as quickly as we can get it. And that's one of the things. We also want the good news too. We want to know what good happened within this system during the time period and where we're going and progress that we're making toward the goals that we've established as a school system, as a board. And that kind of thing, I think, is essential with the board. Gentlemen?
Well, pretty much feel like we need a superintendent who's going to be effective and efficient. And effective and efficient toward what's best for the children. That's the bottom line, what's best for the children. And always those decisions are not the most popular decision, but in the bottom line is this good for the children? The other thing would be to be a community support. There's a considerable amount of negative thought process about the system. I think the community is being misled about this failing school score where one grade level determines the whole school fails or pass. I think that's statistically ridiculous. So we need someone to go out there and tell that story. We need somebody to tell all the citizens of Mobile that you're getting a good product and getting a public school education. And contrary to what the city of Mobile wants to do in terms of breaking off, what are they going to do differently that we're not trying to do? I think the thing about making sure that the superintendent cares, I think in the first 60 days since that question was asked, they need to try to visit every school. I know it's 84, meaning 2 or 3 schools in a day, but we need someone to get out there and actually build a good relationship with the public and being transparent. The truth sometimes hurts, but the bottom line is it in the best interest of the children and you're doing what's fiscally feasible rather than what's politically feasible?
Thank you. Mr. Stringfellow?
Yes. And I agree with my colleagues here, but you know, you made a statement about doing the same thing over and over. One of the things I'd like to see from our new superintendent Mr. Threadgill, is be a visionary. In other words, not willing to take chances to improve things that maybe we haven't tried before or whatever. And I think that's important. Second thing to me would be somebody who's approachable and stuff. If a board member can't talk to you or you can't talk to them about an issue, then that would be a problem for us like that. Also, I'm looking, and I would think the board would agree, would be someone who is a positive face for the community, because you're going to be out there talking to all kinds of groups, politicians, the average citizen, parents, whatever, teachers and stuff, and being a positive face and communicating what our goals are and how we are attaining them and so forth. And then I think the last thing I'm looking for is a superintendent that can set reasonable, obtainable goals that we all can follow. When I say we, I'm talking about from the board all the way down to the classroom and so forth like that.
Thank you, Mr. Stringfellow. Mr. Battles?
What else supposed to be answering?
He asked what it was that we
Expecting a-
wanted in a superintendent.
Well, I'll tell you what I want in a superintendent. I want a superintendent who's gonna work. But more importantly, though, is to be fair and impartial. Horace Mann says that the role of public education in America is that we would teach our children the American way of life. We would teach them civics so that they would understand that while they had a right to a free and a public education, they also had a corresponding responsibility to be good students. But that is only done by communicating through the superintendent of fairness, of dealing with teachers and administrators and with unions on an equitable basis, and not playing this old buddy-buddy game. There's been a lot of buddy-buddy game in this system here that I have been able to witness in my last 4 years, but I want a superintendent who's gonna be independent thought, but at the same time, though, be cooperative to work with the board in conjunction with what we're trying to achieve as a school system. I also would like to have a superintendent who strictly adheres to the policies and the procedures that are set by this board, and don't go out setting your own policies, you know. Don't set your own procedures. The board is the controlling factor here, and the respect that you give is the respect that we give to you. And finally, I would want a superintendent who will be independent and look at the condition of this school system as they are. We're in a terrible shape. We're not only in a terrible shape financially, but morally too. We're having a lot of failing schools. We got a lot of the suspension rates are epidemic. The behavior in the classrooms are out of order. Some of the teachers who are in some positions shouldn't be there and because they're not really qualified to be. We need to be able to take, I want a superintendent who's gonna take an assessment of the total situation, and once that assessment is made, we'll take the appropriate action and try to correct that. I think this is what we would do real good in that selection process, Dr. Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Battles. Mr. Harwell?
Well, I would like to say to start with that the superintendent that we have in place now is a great woman, great superintendent, and probably one of the best superintendents, or not the, she probably is the best superintendent, not only in the state of Alabama, but this country, in my opinion. So, but, and I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes or insult anybody, but the VCR thing has me thinking that the VCR was very effective, and it worked at the time that it was in place. And our superintendent's been that way. And so, yes, we are looking to go further, and I think our superintendent sitting would say the same thing. So, you know, it's when you gonna replace somebody that's great, you're gonna have to be great. And you have to define that yourself. But like I said, I'm looking for, there's nothing I can say bad about the last 5.5 years I sat on this board, I was superintendent. And so I'm just looking forward to what's in the future and what you're going to do, make your name in the state of Alabama and the greatest school system in the state of Alabama. So you'll make your way, and then we can define that.
Thank you, Mr. Harwell. I want to say thank you once again, Mr. Threadgill. Wanted to comment on one thing that you said, and given the fact that I'm elderly now, and I can comment on anything that I care to. But you mentioned that, about finance, and that the younger people pay attention to that kind of thing. Well, some of us old folk do too, and I want you to know that that's one of my things as well. I've always found it's something about the numbers that make a difference. They tend to tell you what the truth is.
He's concerned about Social Security.
And Dr. Crenshaw, he likes numbers as well as I do. I want to thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thank you all.
Have a good day.